Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the All Clemson Show. It's the dynamic duo edition on this beautiful May 20th, Thursday evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brad Seekoff. He is Owen Watterson. Make sure, even though he's not here, you're following Jason Priester on Twitter. He's keeping you up to date on everything going on over at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, and we'll have some more baseball discussion for you tonight. But we appreciate you joining us. It's just us two. Zach unable to perform this evening. So is Jason. He's busy covering baseball. But Owen and I decided the show must go on. How you doing tonight, Owen?
I'm doing good. The best part about not having Zach or Jason is we don't have to do our every Thursday get off my lawn segment at the end of the show from Zach. So I think it's going to be a good night.
I actually thought about adding that in just to keep the Zach Lentz flavor alive and well in the show.
Got muted, man.
Yeah, someone behind the scenes is doing some dirty work back there. But yeah, I opted not to add the get off my lawn segment in tonight's show just to give the public a break. I feel you, folks. You had to put up with it every Thursday night with Zach. So we're giving you the night off. No get off my lawn conversations. We're going to stick strictly to Clemson athletics. Oh, and it's been a weird week in terms of Clemson baseball and softball. The baseball team on the diamond right now, they are down 2-0 early to the Duke Blue Devils. The softball team, however, plays tomorrow in their first ever NCAA tournament regional. They got sent out to Tuscaloosa, which was a little bit of a surprise. Before we get into baseball and their postseason fate, what did you think about the softball fate after a team that won the ACC regular season title, made it all the way to the ACC championship game, lost by 1 run, has one of the best players in the country, had won 40 games, has a great resume, yet did not get a host site? What did you think about that?
Well, I'm on the same boat as a person who was on Twitter at 9 p.m. the other night when the selection committee decided to release their rankings. Look, I think Clemson has a great shot in Tuscaloosa in the regional. But you're right, for how well they played in the regular season, over 40 wins. They were 1 run away at the very end against a really good Duke team who took them the distance earlier in the season. They each won 2 out of 2, I believe. And you're right, Valerie Cagle was and has been the difference all season, along with Coach Rittman, has done an outstanding job. I just think it's a little unfair. You look at a team like Florida State, who didn't even get to the championship game, didn't win the ACC regular season, as you mentioned, like the Tigers didn't even get a chance to match up with Clemson all season long.
That hurt Clemson. That hurt Clemson way more than it. I mean, it helped Florida State, and it really hurt the Tigers. Just to have that matchup and see how they would have matched up with each other would have been very telling. I think the other thing that hurt too was the Clemson had a bunch of games canceled. They had a bunch of games that out of conference games they didn't get to play. There's just play down in Florida at a tournament that got canceled, and you factor that in with not playing Florida State, having Notre Dame post or cancel because of COVID. That's 4 less games, 4 less wins probably. They win all 4 of those. They're sitting at like 44 wins. How do you keep them out of a regional? But ultimately, RPI is what the committee's going to tell us was the difference. That's not accurate and true. The reason Clemson didn't host is simple, Owen. They're Clemson. This is their first real chance at a tournament. They're not Florida State. They're not Alabama. They're not Arizona. They don't have the clout, the status in the softball world. And nobody on that committee is going to tell you that. But I think that's the honest truth. They just didn't have the faith, if you will, of the tournament committee. And that's not Clemson's fault. They did everything that they could do to earn a regional, and the committee decided to go elsewhere. And it's kind of a shame that you got to go out and have multiple years or whatever, proving yourself. I think it should be based on this year and this year alone.
Yeah.
Speaking of this year, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
So speaking of this year alone, Owen, the Clemson baseball team on the verge of potentially missing the NCAA tournament. This is a huge series right now against Duke. This is Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. If the Tigers are unable to win 2 or 3, I think they're borderline out. They were in the latest 64 projection field from D1 baseball. I'm not so sure, though, that if they lose 2 or 3 here, or even if they get swept, they can forget about it.
Yeah.
It puts too much pressure on what happens at the ACC tournament in Charlotte next week. And that thing is a crapshoot. You're in pool play. Much of it is determined by your seeding. So you can go 1-1 and still not advance because of your seeding. 2-0 is hard to do. There's just a lot of variables that are out of your control when you get into that weird format up in Charlotte. Do you think this Clemson team is going to end up making the NCAA tournament?
Well, you just said the score just a second ago that they were down 2-0, and I personally hadn't seen the score quite yet. I saw Mac Anglin was starting tonight, and I liked the chances. I saw Kier Meredith had been moved to the 2-hole, even though I might like him a little bit more at the leadoff spot throughout the season when he's been put there. And speaking of ACC Freshman of the Year, here's another candidate right here on the Clemson baseball team, and Caden Grice, who's been playing great. I'd love to see another great series from him this weekend, as he's been, a little bit up and down, just like the rest of the team has this year. But this series, honest to God, I think if they want to give themselves the best shot, especially barring demise in the ACC tournament, first, second, game knockout, I really would like them to see them sweep Duke. This is the first, by the way, quick fact, this is the first Thursday game they've played all season. And they're down 2-0 early. So, 2 of 3 is absolutely vital. I know you said D1 Baseball had them in the Field of 64. Baseball America also did. Saw D1 Baseball had them in the Starkville Regional as the number 3, and Baseball America had them as a number 3 in Arizona in the Tuscan Regional, facing the Wildcats up there at their house. So you're right. This series is an absolute must win. And even if they only win 2 and manage to win the series, I think a big showing in the ACC tournament is absolutely warranted if they're going to have a chance to get not just regional seeding, but regional seeding that is favorable to them, to give them a chance to make some noise.
Well, I think first and foremost, they just got to try to get in. I understand what you're saying, and it would be help to not be sent to Mississippi State or Ole Miss, because they're not coming out of either one of those 2 places. But bottom line, they're probably going to get sent to an SEC school if they make it. But there's, a streak on the line. There's just the notoriety of being in the NCAA tournament when you're a program like Clemson. It will take a ding with recruiting if you don't make the tournament. I mean, I think that's a logical theory. And Monty Lee don't want to see it. Plus the pressure he would be under next year. There's a lot there, but this team needs to win the series, if not sweep, and then just don't go 0-2 barbecue in the ACC tournament, and they're probably going to slide in based on RPI. And I talked with Aaron Fitt from D1Baseball.com this week, and he did tell me that the RPI restrictions may be lifted a little bit. Usually an ACC team needs to be inside the top 50 to feel pretty decent about getting in. But because of the uneven play and the lack of non-conference games and a complete full season that we're used to seeing, that they may let that bleed over a little bit. But Clemson needs to hang around that 50, 49, 48, 47, somewhere in there. And Duke is ahead of Clemson in the RPI, so it'd be a big series win. Make sure you look down at the bottom of the screen. Don't read the Get Off My Lawn guy stuff. Look at FNX Fitness. Check out what they've got to offer. Go to FNX.com today. Check out the great products, order, and you get 15% off your purchase when you put that promo code in down there. All Clemson 2021. And if get enough stuff, and Zach Lentz will go shirtless an entire show. Get off my lawn.
I thought we were both in on that bet, Brad. Come on, we can't leave Zach hanging out to dry.
He's not in the room right now. We can say whatever we want. 15% off. Go check that out. Yeah, getting swole. That's exactly what FNX.com is all about. All right, Owen, let's move over. Let's move over to a different topic. Let's get into some Clemson football. And, I put up a story this week on allclemson.com. You and I love drafts. We love mock drafts. I know you're probably already reading them like I am for 2022.
Unfortunately.
Were you shocked? It's crazy. We got 11 months left. Were you as shocked as some were to see not Justin Ross, but Clemson receiver Joseph Ngata going 12th overall in CBS Sports' latest mock draft to the Atlanta Falcons? This is a guy who had 7 receptions last year. I think he's got 24 catches in his career, Owen. He's made 3 starts, and yet there he sits as a potential first-round draft pick. Are you buying this for Joseph Ngata?
As much and as highly as Sweeney has talked about Joseph Ngata throughout his career, I I find it hard for anybody to believe that. Brad, if you haven't checked out that story, Brad just did a story on that mock draft on allclemson.com. Go check that out. But when you first wrote that story, Brad, I was a little bit surprised when I went and read it. I had no earthly idea that a team had mocked him that high so early in the season. And while the intangibles, he's 6'3", 220 pounds, in the 2019 Spree game, had only 5 receptions but hauled in 127 yards from Trevor Lawrence. He is a stud. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And while I can understand that projection from a intangible standpoint, I think if he were to make it there this season, get to that kind of stature draft stock wise, it honestly might take some injuries, because even if he stays healthy this year, the amount of talent that is in the receiving room around him this season is just off the charts. Aju is a guy we've all 4 on our staff talked about since before the spring game. Dabo Swinney has as well, along with Justin Ross coming back, EJ Williams coming into a second year, along with Braden Galloway, who I think may be a little under talked about, not a receiver, but will take some of the target share, I'm sure. And I'm just not sure there's enough to go around this year for Joseph Ngata to put his stock that high. Do I think he could be a steal worthy of, a redraft putting him that high? Sure. But I just can't see it happening right now. We're too far out, and we got to see him fully healthy first.
You're not wrong. Nothing you said was wrong. There are a lot of mouths to feed. The last point you made is 100% right. You just got to see him first. Like, he just has not been on the field much in his career. The injuries are an issue. I take nothing away from that. But I think the NFL has changed, though, and I think it's a lot more like the NBA draft than it used to be. The NFL draft used to be based on primarily how they scouted you and your college production numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's begun to change a little bit. I think potential is the key word now. For years, we hear that in the NBA draft. Every June, potential. A guy who scores 12 points a game goes 3rd overall. And you're like, what? That guy didn't do anything. It's about potential. And I think the potential of Joseph Ngata is off the charts. And when Dabo Swinney talks about a receiver the way he talks about Joseph Ngata, that he's going to be a star, that he's going to have a ton of catches, I think NFL teams and mock drafters and all the folks out there, they pay attention to that kind of stuff. So while we haven't seen it, I think there's a good chance you see it this year.
Yeah.
You mentioned his size.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned his size, Owen, but there's a pedigree. This is a 4-star guy, and he has a rapport with DJ Uiagalelei that we saw in the spring game. I just feel like these two are going to connect a lot. While Justin Ross is going to get a lot of focus and his health is a big story and all that, and the comeback, he's going to be in the slot. I think you're going to see DJ look for Ngata a lot. I think you could potentially see 1,000-yard receiver at Joseph Ngata. I know that sounds bold.
Wow.
But
bold,
I think
bold.
If he goes for 1,000 and 8 to 10 touchdowns, he might be a first-round draft pick, folks.
Yeah.
All right,
let me get one more in on Joseph Ngata, because I think the point you made there about the NBA draft is outstanding. And just before we move on, right, I think you saw that just this past year with a guy down at Columbia, J.C. Horn, went number 8. College production numbers weren't great, didn't have an interception until his last season with the Gamecocks, and ended up going all the way from projected 3rd round before the season started, sometimes a little later, moved his way all the way into the top 10 just because of the talent they thought he had. So you're absolutely right there. I just think we got to see it from him first.
I think you will. And I think there's just – I'm not saying he's a first-round draft. I'm saying it's not crazy to make an argument that he could be a first-round draft pick. All right, let's wrap things up here tonight, Owen. Last topic of the evening, and we'll get out of here and let Zach do whatever he's doing behind the scenes here, because we keep getting just some random trolling going on down at the bottom of the screen. But please go to fnx.com and use that promo code AllClemson2021 to get 15% off. The Clemson-Georgia line. I almost said that without laughing. No, that's not a country band. The Clemson-Georgia betting line is out. And a couple weeks ago, I remember a certain person on this show, not you or I, saying that Clemson's going to win by at least 17 points in this game. They open as a 3-point favorite on FanDuel. They open as a 4-point favorite on DraftKings. I feel like this number is about right. I feel like that's about what I expected it to be when it opened up. I'm not really surprised by it. I'm not sure it goes way, way up. I think we're talking about in that same kind of range. What are your thoughts on this line? Is it correct? Is it too high? Is it too low? What do you think?
I think I like the Clemson favored by 3 a little bit more than I do 4 at this point. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, because we're here in South Carolina, it's a little bit harder to bet on those money lines, as you know. But yeah, I think 3 and 4, those are really fair. I think if you're Vegas and your guys drawing up those sports books, I think you have to trust DJ Uiagalelei a little bit more than JT Daniels, excuse me. Even though you did see a little bit of both of them. Last year, Georgia has a lot of.
To be fair, to your point, before Georgia fans get mad, JT Daniels played 4 games, 4 starts. We saw 2 starts out of DJ, so it's not like there's this huge, massive difference in experience level. Now, JT did play at Southern Cal, but still, he hasn't played a whole lot of football in 2 years.
Now, the biggest difference, I think, like you said, JT might have a little bit more time on field. And to be fair to him, once again, we did a story a while back covering G-Day when they had their spring game just a few months ago. And watching JT Daniels, I can't lie to any Clemson fans that might not have done their due diligence yet before the season starts. JT Daniels looks good in the pocket, and I mean really good, despite the no-sack problem in spring games that you see all across the country, right? His footwork was incredible, moving around, evading sacks, even when guys had him open for the most part. So I think that'll help him a lot, but I think the retooled offensive line is not going to be able to handle the defensive line. And ultimately, on either side, Georgia's defensive line or Clemson's, I think it's going to be one there in the trenches. And for that reason, I like the basic home field 3-point favorite to Clemson type line, even though it is a neutral site game. I think that line's fair. I think max would have to be Clemson by 7.
Yeah, I don't think it ever gets that high. I don't foresee that. Yep. But the reason I think Clemson is favored is because of their defensive returnees, all the guys that came back. Georgia's replacing most of the secondary, and I think that worries the odds makers as they're looking at it. And they're expecting Justin Ross healthy. We just talked about Ngata. You talked about EJ Williams and all the other receivers. Yep. DJ can air it out.
Georgia does not have nearly as many weapons on the outside as Clemson does.
Yeah, they don't. With George Pickens, he's going to be out from this game. They have solid receivers. I don't think they're stars, at least not yet. So there's a huge advantage for Clemson.
Just not to the level of when you – and I know we cover Clemson, and I say this as unbiased as possible. Looking down this depth chart, it's just hard to ignore, like you said, that returning talent in comparison to what JT might have coming back. And, despite that, I think Clemson, despite losing Jackson Carman and a couple other guys, I really like what they're looking like on the offensive line as far as moving people around. It's not really finalized where some guys like a Matt Bockhorst might be playing this year. But all in all, with the depth that Clemson has in the backfield as well, they'll be able to keep most of their guys fresh throughout the game if Lin J doesn't look right. Running through tackles. I just think there is too much offensive firepower in this game for Georgia. But yes, I do like the line. I don't think Georgia will ever be favored in this line leading up to this game.
Put plenty of time to break this game down. Can't wait to do it all summer long. We'll go position by position, folks. Don't worry. We'll have more on this game. Those are just our early thoughts on the line. This wraps up the All Clemson show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to FNX Fitness. Make sure you go to FNX.com, put in that promo code, and make sure you send Zach all kinds of love. We hope he comes back and ready to roll next week. In the meantime, make sure you're keeping what's going on with Clemson baseball. Jason Priester's all over it. We'll have a story up tonight on allclemson.com. For Owen Watterson, I'm Brad Sinko. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week, folks. Take care. Have a good one.